At the moment, most Americans believe that circumcision is healthier, cleaner, simpler for the parents take care of the boy, traditional, he'll want to look like that, he'll want to look like that in the swimming pool, etc. So until we break through that barrier, nothing's going to happen. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just last week I saw in the paper a headline that the AMA said the benefits to circumcision outweigh the risks. Just last week. I didn't know you were going to be here today.
You should have brought it along and waved it at me.
I didn't know it. It was last week, just last week.
No. I have a reply to that. The American Academy of Pediatrics in 2012 absolutely admitted that the morbidity of infant circumcision is completely unknown. And they admitted the morbidity of postnatal, that is, circumcisions performed when the child is a toddler or a young man, is also unknown. And here's a fundamental principle of epidemiology that I think we all could agree on. If you have not studied the morbidity of a medical intervention, you can make no claims about its benefit. Because clearly, the benefit can only be expressed in terms that take into account all the bad stuff that happens from it. So until they clean up their act and do some longitudinal studies about people like me, and let me be overly candid, I'm almost 70 years old, I would like to have my erogenous tissue back. And I will tell you, my wife would like to have my erogenous tissue back. And I don't think that I'm being indiscreet by saying that, and she would nod her head if she were here. So they've never done the studies about men my age who were deeply affected by this, and whose really bad effect is happening in their 5th, 6th, and 7th decades. And the irony, as you all know, is we're living longer. I suppose you could argue for circumcision in the 19th century when people only lived to 40, but now we're living to 90. And I think we're entitled to live full lives at 90. So they haven't answered that question. So the CDC recommending it, the AMA recommending it, it is completely cultural. It has nothing to do with science. It has everything to do with money.
What do they mean by benefit and then risks? I don't, I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Most people just read the headline too, and they say, "Oh, circumcision benefit." Not onto the sports page. I mean, we know that. See, one of the reasons I'm agitated this week is the CDC is about to recommend circumcision for its alleged effects in slowing the spread of HIV. Now, here's the thing. HIV is mostly a problem of men having sex with men and people using illegal drugs with needles. It is not a general population issue in the States in any particular number, even though we have the highest rates in the Western world and also the highest rates of circumcision. So it didn't work, did it? But the other thing is, is the CDC and the AMA willing to lean over a little tiny 8-pound boy and say to the parents, "I see a gay drug user in your future"? We can deal with HIV as a sexual, social problem that requires condoms and safe sex. I don't think it requires the surgery of every single little boy born in the US, even though the money would be great. Thanks for that question.
Okay, what about the case of mentally retarded or incompetent parents? Do their children end up circumcised? And how do they work on that?
You mean sort of against the will of the parents, or that the parents were not attentive enough to?
There might be obviously are mentally retarded, and can they consent to having their children circumcised?
Well, the child, I think we'd have to sort it out to the fact that the child would at least have to have some sort of guardian that the law would recognize. It might be those parents, even if they are mentally retarded.
So it could be a court-appointed guardian could authorize it.
Yeah. That child is not going to be without a guardian.
I see.
Somehow it will have a guardian. And it's that person's choice, essentially, in our culture.
I see.
And by the way, has anybody followed the Chase Hieronymus case in Florida? It's a 4-year-old boy who, it's a classic spite circumcision case. I get involved in a bunch of these every year, fortunately not too many. A spite circumcision case is where the parents leave the child intact at birth. They have a falling out 3-4 years later, and then one of them decides to circumcise the boy to spite the other parent. And this case in Boynton Beach, Florida, I mean, this 4-year-old boy has got his foot on a banana peel right now because the father wants it, and the local family court and the appellate court in Florida said, yeah, sure, whatever. The parents signed a parenting agreement in which they said they would circumcise the boy, but the mother kind of mixed it up with vaccination. And then later she recanted and said, I didn't mean to do that. I don't want, that's not going to happen. And then she read up on circumcision and thought, this is a barbaric thing. I'm not going to do this to my son. And I won't let my ex do it. They were never married, by the way. But the father is a businessman, and he's got leverage, and the boy's toast. But, I mean, it's kind of sad, because someday this boy, now think about it, he's 4 years old right now, right? He's soon going to be 14. What is he going to type into Google? Circumcision and his own name. And what is he going to see? Hundreds of articles about the fight of his parents when he was 4 years old. And everyone will know what happened, including him. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm a little bit disappointed when I track these circumcision cases through the courts.
Right.
That the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution is usually not cited, and the Fourth Amendment it can be interpreted as guaranteeing the right to bodily integrity.
Right.
It's the closest thing that we have in the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
To the United Nations Charter,
Well,
which guarantees security of person.
I agree with you. And there's
Okay.
also an International Convention on the Rights of the Child and various other treaties that forbid what are called traditional practices prejudicial to the interests of children. But here's a concept that we're going to have to live with, and that is that the law does not lead the culture. The culture leads the law. And so you might hope for a legal choice from this, but that would be way out in front of the American public. For instance, does anyone know the 2 countries in the world that have not signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child? United States is one, yup, and Somalia. You know why Somalia didn't sign? Because they don't have a government. It's basically a stateless state. The reason the U.S. didn't sign is because fundamentalist Christians do not want to sign a treaty that might take away some of the ownership rights they feel they have over their children. And also, we're out of compliance with the treaty because we have kids who work late at night in dangerous convenience stores. We have kids running dangerous farm machinery. We have underage workers. We have unpaid workers. So there's a whole raft of reasons why it's not going to happen. It's too bad. I understand your impatience with the law. I do.
Yes, but I guess this group can appreciate the frustration, because we do have there is something enshrined in the Bill of Rights,
right,
which would guarantee that a child not be circumcised because they have the right to bodily integrity. But and then we have atheists here who point out that the First Amendment guarantees the separation between state and church, and that's not being followed. So the Constitution is not being followed in either case.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, mate.
And in addition, in addition to the Fourth Amendment,
right,
there are guarantees to bodily integrity in the English common law,
right,
and the Anglo-Saxon law before that,
right.
And that is so the right to not be circumcised as a child is really an inalienable right. But you're right.
You're making some of the same arguments.
The culture follows the law instead of
right. That's the sorry part. Yeah. Sometimes the law leads. Sometimes the law leads, like the 1954 decision in Brown versus Board of Education. That was the law out front of the American population, and it created a fantastic change in American life. And it was a terrible chance that the court took, that they were so far out in front that they would then lose their power as an institution. It's like there are a lot of courts that are out front of the American public on same-sex marriage and saying it's a right, you can't vote it up or down. If you have a right, you got it. But as to circumcision, it's still considered beneficial enough by enough people, and enough people want their son to look like them, that the law has no real leverage. Trust me, I've thought and read and studied and convened with lawyers on this issue for a decade and a half. We can't think of a way to crack into it. I don't know that the standard is that high, or that if it is, that it's being followed at all.
Well, I think the law just is not being followed again.
Correct. That's the problem generally. I agree with you.
Yes,
yeah.
John, could you share with us about the New York case that's now being appealed on the Metsitsa Bepeh, the Moyle's right to suck the boy's penis after having circumcised him?
Yeah, quick backup. I'll give you the short version. Around the same time that the American Academy of Pediatrics was weighing circumcision, and slightly prior, a woman named Susan Blank, she was then the head of the New York Department of Health. And they had trouble with a Moyle who had active herpes and who had practiced the old-fashioned, ancient Bronze Age practice of actually putting his mouth on a child's penis. And the thing is, if you are an adult and have herpes, you can manage it, cyclovir and various other things, but it's fatal for a child. It'll either cause the death of the child or a very, very serious brain injury that the child will be basically need 24-hour care forever. So this Moyle is undaunted. He simply just kept doing it even though he'd killed 2 children. And unfortunately, he comes from a branch of Judaism which is very clan-based and where they circle the wagons anytime the outer culture tries to regulate anything they do. And they wouldn't say anything bad about this particular Moyle. So then the New York Department of Health came up with what they consider a Solomonic sort of solution. They said, well, why don't we just have the parents sign a paper saying they're aware that the Moyle might give the child herpes? So, and my thought as a lawyer is, what the hell do the parents have to do with it? It's the child who's taking a risk with his own life. Maybe you want to wait till he's 18 and get him to sign the paper. So that was their solution to the problem. And that's basically, I think, where it sits. I don't think that it has that regulation of the Department of Health has been challenged, has it? Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you're quite right, Norm. They have challenged it on the grounds that even it is intrusive. They don't even want to have the agreement, even though I consider the agreement worthless and would happily have said, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah, it's a bad deal. And maybe the court will choke and throw it out and say, oh, well, let's let it go.
Okay, we want to present you with this small plaque.
Oh, that's wonderful. I had no idea.
The photographers are ready, see? And so we're going to just cuddle up.
Okay, excellent.
They're not going to suck up.
Right.
Well, I had to put that in there.
Well, thank you. I'm deeply honored. This is great. I will hang it on my wall very proudly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But I have a couple of guys that came here from Western Michigan, and I wanted you to hear their story. They call themselves the Atheist Analysis, and I'm not going to tell you very much about them. I'm going to let them explain that to you themselves because they'll be the experts on it. Anyway, they're going to tell you a fascinating story. And when I'm talking about unity today, power tomorrow, these guys doing nothing or just belonging to a group was so unsatisfactory. And so they wanted more, and they got more.
My name is Chris Hanna, as Arlene mentioned. It's Chris Tanner. We are frequently called the Chris's on Atheist Analysis on our web podcast program. But before that, we'll just go through some background real quick. I'm a lifelong Michigander, lifelong non-believer. Educated at Saginaw Valley State and student athlete, graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. I played semi-professional baseball in Utica, New York for 1 season. I'm the director of operations and blog manager with Atheist Analysis. I also write and create video blogs when I can. And I just started a new show called Heretical Minds. It's a Thursday night psychology and science education podcast. As a recent graduate a few years ago, small business entrepreneur with my father, I found myself unable to remain on the sidelines as I exited the umbrella of college and learned of the real world and the many failings that I just simply didn't know about. So current events, geopolitical, religious strife around the world was becoming something that I started reading about. And then I started writing social networking posts about. And then I started carrying around a little notebook that I had to write all these crazy things in my head out because I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't find an output or a place for these things in my head. So I didn't know how a place to put it. So to make a difference, podcasts like The Thinking Atheist told me that I wasn't alone and it's okay, I'm not crazy. I never really sought a label for supernatural. It was just a general apathy towards the supernatural. It was just a fantasy tale for me. And it was more about the holiday gifts and the loot than it was any other supernatural prize. So, but after I finished college and I was wandering around in my shop, at this moment, at the search for the outlet I mentioned earlier, I sent an email to Michigan Atheists, and I got an email back directly from Arlene. Like I expected it, just a random webmaster saying, thank you for your interest. And I was ecstatic. She told me about the CFI programs in the area. I didn't know of anything that was on that in the area. And also, but more importantly, she sent me his email. And we met immediately and immediately started sketching our plans for world domination. It was instantaneous. But in a few weeks, he had gotten involved with atheistanalysis.com. At the time, I was working on my WordPress blog. That's what I had started under Dephilosophy, and it was slowly growing with multiple posts a week. And And when I was asked, and we talked about that, it kind of warranted my position on the team as a blogger. I'll let Chris introduce himself.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Christopher Tanner. I'm a local activist. My desire is to demonstrate the need for increased activism. I'm also an active member of the CFI. I am an active member in a small LGBT group called Small Town Allies, an LGBT group out of Allegan, Michigan. I run a lot of their business side of things as they start to grow. But I didn't come here to tell you all of that today. I mean, in the end, I'm just one person, you know, but I desire to help other people contribute, to help other people feel that they can create positive experiences and help change and make everybody else activists. So today I want to do two things. One, I want to provide reasons why we should embrace activism. The second is to demonstrate that people are already activists and they may not even know it. So many of you have probably been asked before, you know, by religious people mainly, you know, why do you have to push your activism? Why do you have to push your atheism and your secular humanism into our face? And, you know, there's lots of answers you can give to that. You can tell them, you know, we were founded as a secular nation. We just want our secular roots thing. But I'll be honest, those are very rehearsed answers. They probably heard those how many different times? I mean, they have apologists out there that continue to try and push all of those answers to the side. So I say, let's take a different approach. So when people ask you why you promote your beliefs, they're probably talking about activism. Now, they don't want to call it activism, but your beliefs, what you feel, what your worldview is, that is activism. They could be talking about the fact that you wear a Be Secular bracelet, or you wear an American Atheist shirt, or that you sponsor the FFRF, or Rob Austin's organization. They could be talking about all these different things, but whatever they're referring to, they're talking to you about being an activist. And so an activist is anybody that can do anything to help further a cause. So the reason most people consider those of us who speak out against religion and to stand up for atheists activists is because we're speaking against something that defies the norm. What they believe, they feel should be the only belief system ever used. So even if you see yourself just attending a meeting or speaking up, the public sees you as an activist. You know, what is the definition of activism? You know, and we could spend hours defining activism. We could spend hours defining what's a social norm. We could spend hours defining all those. There's another school of thought, skepticism. Most of us came to understanding the world through skepticism once we left Christianity. If we weren't a Christian to begin with, we used skepticism to help us determine. So naturally, what do we want to do as good skeptics? Naturally, we want to help make other people good skeptics. As atheists, we also have to have a worldview, but you know, atheism isn't technically a worldview. Atheism is what? A lack of belief in a gods? Or, you know, I guess you could call it a lack of evidence for a belief in a gods. So how do we determine our world? How do we determine what motivates us to fight for the rights of the minorities within our country? I say it's humanism. Humanism is a term most people adopt. Whether you want to admit it or not, we have to have a world philosophy and a worldview, unfortunately, because the way that the world is categorized, the way our brains work. So I choose humanism as an individual. Most atheists also adopt a form of secular humanism. Humanism is the ethical and philosophical stance that emphasizes the value of agency of human beings using skepticism and critical thinking instead of an established doctrine. So in true reality, you know, humanism is referred to and defines life from a non-theistic stance. So what does that mean for you? We're not defined by our atheism, right? And humanism is our worldview, and skepticism is how we find it. We're defined by our personalities. We're defined by our voices. We're defined by our bodies, our skill sets, our talents, our interests. That's what we're defined for. We enjoy a variety of things as atheists, right? We aren't all the same. You know, we have biological genetics that are combined with how we were brought up, sprinkled with a little bit of social pressure. And that's what defines us. So the unique difference that makes us up is that we're all human. We're a human species. Our species is unique in the fact that we've evolved consciousness, empathy, and the ability to reason under multiple pressures. But despite our uniqueness, we still have humanity. We still are a collective. Without each of you, the world would be one less unique person to dispel your knowledge upon from what it is. As an atheist and secular humanist, there's only one life, and I want to take charge of it. Our impact is something that everyone should take seriously. One person can make a small dent, or several people can make several small dents, which will create a larger dent. Activism can come in so many different forms and different methods. As we defined earlier, just our worldview technically makes us an activist. We're activists because we are not part of the norm and because we want to stand out and make a difference. So find something that you love. Find something that you do best. You know, as Ellen was saying, let's stop voting. Let's go out there, say we're not going to vote. You know, we can also go contact our representatives. We can go and create more representatives. If you guys have an inkling to be in politics, let's go out there. I'd vote for you. I will vote for, you know, an atheist that will, you know, sponsor my beliefs. You can join the SSSA, help them out. You can start local parenting groups. You can petition. You can do all these other different things. You can start a grassroots organization. You know, you can volunteer at your local soup kitchen or your homeless shelter and wear your favorite atheist t-shirt. The amount of forms of activism in our environment is limitless. There's so many things that we can do. The potential is hidden away by our society because they don't want to see us as activists. They don't want us to protrude on their belief and their worldview. Our mission should be to use activism to encourage others to speak their mind, to speak up as humanists, as atheists. By doing this, if you do this, you will inspire the next person to do it and the next person, and soon we will create a big catastrophic, you know, surrounding where everybody comes out as a humanist or an atheist. Davey Nielsen once said that we could create a demographic category, a group of tax-paying secular Americans who refuse to have public policy shaped in a manner that vilifies their identity and exalts anti-intellectualism. So in my opinion, humanism is the worldview we need to use. Humanism is the only real worldview that is fair and just and evaluates all worldviews equally. Humanism isn't, you know, here, we don't want to force it on other people. We want to use it just to examine the way the world works. So let's go back to that question and how that you were asked. The religious people ask, why do you push your humanism, why do you push your atheist activism into the public sphere? In short, the answer is skepticism. We wouldn't be here today without skepticism. The laws, the worldview, how we evolved over thousands of years is all because of skepticism of different positions. So we believe that by saying a contrary position, we will be able to allow for a critical examination of all worldviews to help provide a more well-balanced decision. We don't want our worldviews relegated to the corner. We don't want to be sitting at a different table. We want to be up there in front with everybody else. And we feel that with our worldview, we have the ability to actually transcend some of the crazy other worldviews that seem to push their way into politics. So, you know, there's many activists that have come before me. There's many that were going to come after me. Most of those people are probably a lot more talented than I am. Most of them are probably done greater things. I mean, most of the people in this room have probably done more things for atheism and secular humanism than I probably can even imagine or have done in the last 2 years. And I applaud you. You guys are my inspiration. You are the ones that make me want to do what I want to do. I want to speak up because of people like you. We also need to continue to inspire other people. We need to get other people to stand up to do the exact same thing that we're doing. So I'm going to say I'm not unique in what drives me, except for my desire. I have a desire to use reason and skepticism to promote what I believe and what I feel everybody else should believe. So this isn't about me, this isn't about you, this is about everybody. This is about changing society. It's time to embrace our talents and to harness our skill sets and to help move humanity forward one step at a time. In this step of evolution of our personal activism is Atheist Analysis. That's what we have decided to embrace. That's what we want to use to help create a tidal wave. You know, this is a good vehicle of transport for us. Maybe it isn't for you, but for us, this is a great vehicle of transport, and we hope that we inspire all of you to find your mode and your vehicle of transportation to help improve society as it goes. That was my little thing. Chris Hanna has a little bit about the niches of our organization and how maybe they can apply to you or how you can get involved with us.
Moving on, I'm not that unique, just like he had mentioned, but what I know is incredibly interesting is niches, and that's one of the things Arlene wanted us to talk about. Individuality, personal freedom, and liberation of the mind. This site has offered me a link to the atheist world that I never thought I would be able to interact with.
We want to talk and have a conversation with every atheist. We think everybody is important, and so while maybe we've had some big names, that's not our goal. Our goal is to find everybody that has an interesting thing. So we pick a topic, let's have a conversation. You know, Bria was on our show talking about local conventions and why they're probably honestly more important than a national convention.
Anyways, we've been using the title of a network lately, and what we've done, we've combined it, a few different shows with shows that have started in different places, not specifically shows that we've created. And we've created a bigger, better entity with the goals, obviously, to create an autonomous series of shows that act as an educational resource, an entertainment hub, and even inspire, you know, the next series of activists, like he was mentioning. But so this leads to the meat of why Chris and I are here, we are in the midst of a race. I call it an arms race, if you will. A race where the mechanical rabbit has been replaced by the technological innovators of tomorrow. So the trendsetters, the next media, the next relativistic social evolutions. And what I mean in that is atheist analysis, what I like to call the niche of the new. We constantly have to think fast and evolve faster to catch the next way of communicating between young and maturing adults. So the reason of this this idea is specifically to get to go from the knowledge from the meticulously recorded analysis of religious history that they seek or get them when they're young. Providing the information that the youth seek, a medium that they are using in a best case scenario to help them get an interested party make that small step. That's the goal. It's the small step from being a person that's liking things on the internet and hiding in the shadows of the internet to finally go out and be a part of a CFI group or maybe come to a convention and just make that little step so that they're actually active in the group. We're now concentrating on making individual shows and blogs fit under that umbrella. But finally, my personal goal, I guess, is on the political side of things. Like I said, I've never really had any theological training. So I suspect the initial spark of this entire series was to get more people on Capitol Hill. And I see getting more people involved through Capitol Hill, through the small steps, is the best way to go. And transitioning into life as an open non-believer and trying to just, I guess, leave that fear of social ostracization behind. So this is where I think Atheist Analysis will make a difference. A new niche media hub for the YouTube generation, sanctioned 501c3 nonprofit charitable endeavors such as our Growing with Atheists, and of course it allows me to feel the weight of the infinite political funding of the Koch brothers market economic systems, and we can fight that in our own little way. So we're gonna finish off with our mission statement. Sure. We can do that. Yeah, just real quick.
Atheist Analysis is here to create an all-encompassing environment that promotes self-activism, science, atheism, humanism to the world. Through an interactive community, we help to develop an atmosphere that promotes equality and the embetterment of life. As we grow, we will stimulate conversation, enlighten people, future generations of atheists, agnostics, humanists, feminists, critical thinkers, skeptics, LGBTQ rights supporters, and above all, activists. So thank you guys very much. Thank you for having us. Amaze yourself, amaze the world.